Hey everybody, how you doing? I'm Dr. Cool Whip, and I've got another continuation version of why I should use what gun, what perks are good, all that kind of stuff. The whole point of these videos, hold on, let me adjust my audio really quick. The whole point of these videos is to help you make informed decisions as to what perks do, why they do them, and what kind of situations they're beneficial to have those kind of perks in. So first I'm going to be showing you a compound bow that has something called explosive tip, and I'm going to be showing you a really quick shot combination that you can use with a bow that has explosive tips and a sniper rifle that has something like snapshot. Okay? And then I'll show you the difference between explosive tip and snapshots, and we can go into the nitty-gritty about bows and all that kind of stuff, because I do really like the bows. So, explosive tip, shoot. See that it has a delayed explosion. You can see that pretty self-evident. So you can switch to a sniper rifle, quick scope, and hit the same target before your delayed explosion goes off. Now the advantage of that is that even if you body shot with the sniper rifle, you're still going to be doing a crap ton of damage. I think it's about 110 damage from the initial shot from the arrow, and then you follow up with a body shot that does, I think, around 85 to 95 damage, and then the delayed explosion will actually kill the target that you're looking at. So this is a pretty raunchy combination of lethality here. It's just the quick scope switch from a bow using explosive tips. You're welcome. And you'll look cool doing it. Like that's the fun part, is that you'll be able to montage the crap out of people on the internets, right? Just from using a bow and a sniper rifle. And it's cool. Bows are awesome. So I personally am somebody that prefers to use something like snapshot sights on a bow, because I do really like the feel of snapshot sights. I also like the feel of aerial combat and so on and so forth. But the advantage to the explosive tips is that you do get a nice visual indicator as to where your previous shot was for tutorial purposes. I think that's a reasonable tool, and it's also a very effective tool as well. So if you're hitting your target with an explosive tip arrow, it has a delayed explosion, and that explosion goes off, and then they take damage after you've struck them initially. The reason why I prefer snapshot sights over an explosive tip is one reason alone, and you don't have to agree with me at all, ever. Okay? Both of these perks are extremely good. Snapshot Sights doesn't do anything really for its ADS speed comparatively to the explosive tip. It does marginally increase it, but it's not really noticeable. But the main difference is that when you don't have explosive tips on your arrow, you do all of your damage all at once. That's literally the only reason why I use Snapshot. It seems to be a little bit snappier and responsive when you're using snapshot, and you also do all of your damage in one shot instead of having to wait to do damage later on. Now the advantage again to explosive tips is that it does damage over time. You can do some pretty cool combo stuff like that. You can mix up fighting a lion instead of a sniper rifle. You can do all kinds of cool things, and it also prevents prolonged recovery. So explosive tips might be a little bit more meta than using snapshot, but again, I prefer to do all my damage all at once. It's the same philosophy with hand cannons. Why do a lot of damage over time when you can just do a lot of damage all at once, right? That's why people like hand cannons. You can lump sum your damage in a couple of bursts or a couple of shots or half a magazine, or you could lump sum all your damage into one shot and put your target down without any problems. That's why people like rocket launchers. It's just you shoot the thing and it's dead. Right? That's the whole kind of concept. That's why I use snapshot. But it's also cool to do like little trick shots and things like that. So it's fun to show, everybody, my viewers, the kind of stuff that I enjoy trying to figure out. Whether it's good, whether it's viable, and all that kind of stuff. Now, one thing you'll note is that in the Crucible, being in the air is not the most rewarding thing in the world, but it is also a very aerial space-based game. To an extent. Hunters have very good verticality, Titans have very good lateral movement, and Warlocks are kind of somewhere in between, which is why I'm using a chess piece that has kind of synergy along with aerial combat. It also has very good perks on it, so that's why I never take it off, and it looks cool. Now, I've got a hand cannon here, sorry about the poor audio there, to show you what quick draw and a hand cannon. This is a pretty typical build, you know. You use like a sniper rifle or a shotgun, a hand cannon with quick draw. The usual culprit is like in Season 1 or Season 2 or Season 3 or whatever. I think it came out in Season 2, but in Year 1, the typical culprit was Home for the Lost and Fighting Lion. You can still do something like that. If you're using Fighting Lion with a hand cannon, you can do that. You can also do it with a sniper rifle. You can do it with a shotgun, yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of really cool gun switching mechanics that you can use. And now that the loadouts are freed up a little bit more, you have access to those kinds of things. So in the background, you're going to see me doing like some pretty finicky little specified trick shots and showing you the validity of using like these kind of aerial combat maneuvers, and are they even possible? Should I even be trying to do that? Well, it's something that you can practice for sure. And if you're looking for reasons why perks are good on certain guns, this is what makes these guns shine the most. You can see the accuracy there between the two on using two weapons that have very high handling speed and snapshot on a sniper rifle for very specific reasons in the air. That happens to allow you to do some pretty clutch plays if you practice those type of maneuvers. If you're not interested in doing that kind of show-offy, showboat, trick shot, you've been bagging me all game, I'm going to show you what's up kind of maneuvers, then you don't really need to worry about it so much. A lot of the sniper rifles that don't have snapshot or quick draw or perks that have rapidized ADS mechanics are still very reliable, and their handling speeds are comparable as well. So you can get away with having a weapon that doesn't have snapshot or quick draw if you're not interested in doing quick scope, quick kind of finagly shots all the time. Now, let's talk about bows. I am a huge proponent of bows. I shoot bows in real life. I have a compound bow. In real life, I've been shooting for quite a while, and I like bows in this game a lot. So what does stability do? Not a lot of people have been talking about it. I don't think it's really that much of an issue at all anyways. Bows are extremely reliable in this game, and they feel fantastic. So you'll note that the stability on these, whether it's a full draw or a half draw or a fake draw, whatever it is, the stability doesn't really seem to change. The trajectory changes with the draw, but the stability itself doesn't really seem to change whether it's a high stability or low stability. So there's no reason to not get any advantage if you can favor some other type of stat other than stability with your strings or with your shafts. So those are things to consider later on down the line if you're getting a bow. The other things to consider are your masterworks in general. If you have a stability masterwork on a bow and you really like the perk set, and you're looking for something that is just the perfect god roll in, you know, like every single way, if you're looking to really perfect your bow, probably don't want a stability masterwork. So you can write that one off of your box. It's not the most important thing in the world. There's a lot of different ones that are good for different reasons. Reload is actually surprisingly good because it helps you take advantage of the archer's tempo a little bit more reasonably because your arrow knocks faster, which is kind of like a subtle thing. You would think archer's tempo is an ability that allows you to do faster draw times after you've hit a crit, but you can't draw your bow until your arrow is knocked. So that's something to consider, is that the faster your reload speed or your knocking speed, the faster you can actually get advantage of your archer's tempo. A lot of people are favoring draw speed, but reload is actually kind of important as well. So something to consider. Now, before I was showing you some trick shots with bows and snipers and all that kind of stuff. Now, I'm kind of showing you the same thing, but this is a sniper rifle that isn't a lightweight, or not lightweight, an aggressive sniper or rapid fire frame sniper. This is an adaptive frame sniper, but it also has snapshot. And this one happens to have rampage as well. So doing trick shots with a weapon like this make it kind of an interesting mechanic because you can one tap with the bow, clean up a body shot, because most adaptives can body shot after a bow has struck an opponent with a crit. and then you'll proc Rampage, and you'll be able to do more damage and cycle through your weapons more effectively, so long as you have the ammo and the accuracy to back it up. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is the frames and the archetypes and the perk sets that are backing up your other perks and your other weapons in your arsenal that you're taking into the Crucible. So I hope that that was fairly informative. Now what I want to talk about is trust. Or more particularly, what are good rolls on good guns? And I happen to have quite a few trusts laying around. I've even got more in my vault. But this is a good weapon to look at because it's a fairly diverse weapon, but at the same time it's also not. So that is a gifted version of the trust. Excuse me, I've got the hiccups. That was a gifted version of the trust for clearing the first completion of the Gambit playlist. It had a fixed roll. This is a non-fixed version of it. What is this one? This is Rampage and Dragonfly. And you'll note that the stats really aren't that different. Its recoil pattern isn't very different. Its reload isn't terribly different. But this trust has triple tap Rampage and drop mag, as well as a fluted barrel, which increases its handling, so it has a higher handling and reload coefficient than either of the two, and it also has a lethality perk, and it has a perk that allows you to have a prolonged period of time on the battlefield accompanying you with your lethality perk. So I happen to think that this is a pretty decent roll, and it has a range masterwork which boosts its lethality over time. Now this trust, you'll note, has a mod in it. And the mod, amazingly, is not a top tier mod by any means for most weapons. It's called Backup Mag. But look what it does. It gives you 3 extra bullets. Now, that particular trust in general has very well-rounded stats and has basic perks. None of them are lethality perks. The one that I'm talking about, the one with Backup Mag, not the one that's being shown. The footage in the background is just going to show aerial accuracy and so on and so forth. So if you're looking at that, you can just get a gist of the reload speed of the trust, the hip fire, the ADS, and all that kind of stuff while I'm explaining some differences to the other one. But Backup Mag on trust happens to make the weapon have a more prolonged effect on the battlefield. And I personally think, as far as mods go, Backup Mag is about as good as a mod as you can put into this weapon. Yeah, you could probably get away with like a radar tuner if you're really kind of like a comp rat junkie and you just have to have your radar all the time up, you know, like if you really just need your radar, that's fine too. But Backup Mag seems to be really good, especially if you have a lethality based perk set on your weapon there. Or if you don't have something like drop mag, it grants you a little bit more staying power. So the trust, as you can see, is a fairly accurate precision hand cannon. They all seem to have pretty much the same recoil pattern for the most part. There's not many deviations except for in the reload speed. Its inner accuracy is on point, as with all other precision hand cannons. Trust in particular seems to be extremely reliable in the air, and it will hit what it's shooting at every time, all the time. So if you're missing your shots or your crits, that's actually your fault. It's not the gun's fault. This gun hits its target no matter where you're at or how you're shooting at it, even from the hip. Like, you can shoot this with pinpoint accuracy from the hip in the air and it won't miss its shot. The bullet goes where you put it all the time, every time, without a doubt. So keep that in mind. So you don't need something like an Icarus grip, which I'll talk about later, but that is something to consider. So explosive rounds also don't really seem to change any of the mechanics. It has very straightforward firing recoil patterns and all that kind of stuff. It's a little late. I have to admit, it's a little late at my house. And I'm just kind of talking loud and I realized it, but whatever, we're going to continue on with the video. So drop mag, triple tap, all that kind of stuff. Now let's look at the differences between reload. So this is a base reload for a base weapon. Not a bad reload on that. But let's look at what a perk like Drop Mag or a perk like Outlaw might look like if we have that equipped as well. We'll go ahead and, I guess, not reload because I ran out of bullets. That's a feels bad man. But we will get there. We will get there. Hold on. Hold your horses, people. Hold your horses. We're getting there. Just got to run over to the spot, put in the rounds, and then trigger the reload. Okay, so what does Drop Mag do for a weapon like this, or Outlaw? Substantially faster reload. Substantially faster reload. Now, drop mag does cause you to lose some rounds here and there if you reload prior to not running out of bullets in your magazine, but for the most part, the Crucible is pretty forgiving for ammunition, especially if you have weapon ammunition finders in your armor, which we can talk about in another video because that is going to be a topic of conversation. Now, handling speeds are another thing to consider when you're looking at a hand cannon or sniper rifle or a shotgun or just pretty much anything that you might take into the Crucible. So how does... Wow, that's a really slow reload compared to drop mag. How does a weapon like the Trust, which is a hand cannon, which will most likely be backing up another type of weapon, whether it be an auto rifle or an SMG, or a sniper rifle or a shotgun, or a fusion rifle. Well, actually, it can't be a fusion rifle because those are all in the secondary slot, but you know what I'm trying to make, the point that I'm trying to make. It's going to be either your predominant weapon, the dominant weapon that you're using all the time, or it's going to be a backup weapon that's used for quick picks and headshots and all that kind of stuff, and then prolonged exposure to the rest of the map as you're running out of ammo on your special weapon, like a shotgun or a sniper rifle, and so on and so forth. So what is the reason for using a hand cannon like this? Well, it's very good for cleaning up pretty much everything. It's a very reliable weapon, and you want to have good perks, and you want to have good modifiers, and you want to have good just in general stuff. So if you liked any of the ones that you saw in the kind of arsenal at what they're doing, Jesus, it's so late. It's like 2 in the morning here, I can't even speak. If you liked any of the perks and the way that they looked in the demonstration that I'm providing in the background, then those are probably perks that you want to look for. I would highly recommend something like Drop Mag or Outlaw. Definitely those two. I personally think that the backup mag perk seems to be extremely good for this weapon in particular, because you do have access to more rounds in the chamber, and I'm sure that that will affect other weapons as well, now that I think about it. But backup mag is definitely a interesting modifier to have on a hand cannon. You definitely don't need something like Icarus Grip because of its extremely accurate and generously accurate hitbox in the air and precision in the air, even from the hip. So that means that you also don't need a perk called Hipfire Grip, which we will be talking about here in just a moment. But while I'm diddling around in the background with guns and shooting and showing you what kind of scenarios you might get into if you're using aerial combat and combat bows with a hand cannon and yada yada yada. The main point that I want to make is that there are a lot of different rolls that you can get on a weapon like this, but the best roll you can get is the one that is based on pre-understanding of what your weapon does in the first place. If you know your weapon has a high handling coefficient, you don't need something like Quick Draw because that's not really going to change too much. If your handling stat is fully maxed out, already you don't need Quick Draw because it's already going to be ready faster than anything else out there. If you have something with just a crap ton of ammunition in the magazine already, you're not going to need something like a modifier or a modification like backup mag because it's not going to do anything for you. It's not going to add any benefit. If you have a weapon that's extremely accurate and stable from the hip, you're not going to need a perk called Hipfire Grip. And honestly, in most cases, you're not going to need a perk called Hipfire Grip because you don't really want to be shooting things from the hip unless you're very good at aiming and very reliable at aiming, and you happen to understand why Hipfire Grip is good situationally. And I will be getting to that in just a minute, but again, I'm just kind of diddling around in the background, making sure that my footage is on point. So let's take a look at what I'm going to do. Okay, so we're going to look at 10 paces that has Quick Draw, Drop Mag, and I think what we're going to do is look at the handling speeds here. Yeah, I think we're going to line up the handling speeds as much as possible. Yeah, that looks about even, right guys? I think that looks pretty even between the handling speed. So this hand cannon has Quick Draw, which does improve a few things. Now what we're looking at is the difference between the handling speed of a weapon with Quick Draw versus a weapon that doesn't have Quick Draw. And you'll note that the weapon with Quick Draw, the primary weapon, the adaptive frame hand cannon that is being fired right now and reloaded, is much snappier, much more responsive. Even though they have similar handling coefficients, the one with quick draw seems to feel more reactive and more responsive, and the Trust, that does not have quick draw, seems a little bit slower and sluggish on the ADS speed, and that could cost you. That could be pretty costing in the Crucible, especially when time is of the essence. So, those are things to consider. Now we can look at the hip fire mechanism, I think is what this segment of the video is. Yeah, so this is shooting a hand cannon. This is an adaptive frame hand cannon. That's very relevant. Adaptive frame hand cannon from the hip without any changes. This is a precision hand cannon from the hip, and you'll note that there is very little, if any, bullet deviation. This is not using the left stick or the right stick to aim. This is just shooting the gun and letting it reset. And again, this is the same thing with a hand cannon that's a precision archetype, and you'll note that there's literally no recoil whatsoever. So you do not need a perk called hip fire grip, just completely write that off. You also don't need any perks that would modify its stability. Just completely get rid of those. Now let's look at a rapid fire frame or a lightweight frame hand cannon that does have hip fire grip and another relevant perk which is called ricochet rounds. Now, this is, again, the adaptive frame, which has a slower rate of fire, and this is a lightweight frame, which has a faster rate of fire by 10 RPM, but it does have hip fire grip. It still has a lot of climb, but it does have a little less climb. Now, part of that is due to the fact that it has ricochet rounds. Another part of that is due to the fact that it has hip fire grip. But hip fire grip condenses your ADS, your non-ADS box, your hit box, a little bit more, and it grants a little bit of aim assist, a little bit more aim assist while you're from the hip. Now I'm going to try and give you a poor example in the background of what it might be like to try and hip fire and crouch shoot and all that kind of stuff in the background, and it's just a fucking mess. You don't really want to be doing that, especially with a 140. That's just fucking awful. But you can see that even if you're firing from the hip, it's still kind of a fucking mess, okay? So try not to do that too much unless you are actually experienced and you've got some practice with it, and hip fire grip can do some benefit. Now this is an ADS strafe speed, and this is where hip fire grip really gains its advantage, and this is a non-ADS strafe speed. So non-ADS strafe speed is much faster than an ADS strafe speed, so if you're looking to, Jesus, audio, I can't get that right. If you're looking to outstrafe your opponent, hip fire grip is actually not terrible. If you get used to firing your weapon from the hip, hip fire grip is not the most terrible thing in the world. But this is the big one. What does ricochet rounds do? Well, this is nothing changed, obviously, except for the munitions. And it's just all over the place. So if you have something like hip fire grip, make sure you have something like ricochet rounds, or steady rounds even, because that's going to drastically affect the way that your weapon performs. If you have hip fire grip and you do like shooting from the hip and you're decent and you know your time and place and when to do it, definitely keep an eye out for ricochet rounds and definitely keep an eye out for steady rounds. And if you aren't good at it but you're looking to acquire new skills, as in learning how to fire from the hip and so on and so forth, then keep an eye out for ricochet rounds and hip fire grip. Those two seem to work pretty well together. Now let's talk about comboing shotguns and what kind of handling speeds and differentiations there are between shotguns. So I use this loadout a lot. It's the Chaperone with a combat bow. It's a very fun loadout. It makes fun noises. It's got cool perks. It's got very good interactions between the two. Chaperone is a very good cleanup weapon for a bow, much like a bow is a very good combo weapon for a shotgun. You'll note there's some pretty vast severity of difference between the bullet spreads on those two shots, but for the most part this is a fairly consistent, reliable build. Chaperone has maxed out range, and it's a slug rifle shotgun with pretty decent handling, but all of its stats improve as you activate its actual perk, which is called the Roadborne. It gets increased range, increased precision damage, increased handling, so on and so forth. It's a combo weapon, so you definitely want to treat it like a combo weapon, but at base, it's not entirely the most efficient. Its handling speed seems to kind of be a little bit at a deficit, and there are some other shotguns out there that definitely can outpace this one, and you will be having to fight other shotguns. So learning to get your paces around with the Chaperone is definitely something of a learning curve. The advantage that you have with the Chaperone is that you have the range advantage. There's no other shotgun that has as much range as this shotgun, unless you happen to get a slug rifle shotgun that has ricochet rounds and rangefinder and something like quick draw. That's probably the only thing that's ever going to beat you. And it's possible to do that, as far as I know, but I don't think you can get ricochet rounds on a shotgun, so there you go. I don't think you can do that. Maybe rangefinder and slideways with a slug round shotgun, that might be able to do it. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that if you have the Chaperone, you have to learn to play your range and take advantage of the perk set that you have if you really want to maximize that type of combo. So what we're going to be looking at here is the difference between shotgun that's actually very common in the Crucible. This is called the Badlander. It's a rapid fire frame. This one has slide shot and Genesis, and I have it spec'd out for Crucible, or not Crucible, but for PvE purposes because it's pretty decent in PvP. I don't really use it a lot in PvP. It's got kind of decent handling speeds, not particularly great, not particularly bad. But it does have full choke on it and slideways with Genesis, and that's pretty decent. So just gonna try and finagle around in the background with sliding and shooting and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot different when there's not a target in front of you, because there's not that pressing, dire need to shoot the thing that's in front of you and to do it well. But it is something to keep in mind that handling speed when you're trying to do maneuvers like sliding, especially if you've got a perk on your weapon called Slideways, which does increase your weapon range with your shotgun after you slide. It happens to benefit everything, but Slideways does have an impact on your effective range. So learning how to slide and activate your perk is very important. So you want to make sure that you have Slideways with really good handling speed. Maybe Slideways and Snapshots seems pretty decent to me. But the difference between handling is very important. You'll know more often than not, the more you practice with weapons that have varying handling speeds, whether they be slow or fast, or varying perks, you'll know when and where one thing beats another. It's always advisable as a player, if you're trying to improve as a player, not to just go based on what other people tell you to do. Experience the game for yourself. Find out what is good for yourself, even if you're getting shit for it, okay? Even if you're using something that is completely terrible and that is known to be terrible in every single way, even from the developers. Even if the developers come out with a tweet that says, hey, we just built this garbage archetype and it's actually genuinely garbage, and we did it for funsies, and you decided to go test it out, and it happened to be the worst gun in the game, period, you still have the opportunity to test out why it's the worst gun, and where it's the worst gun, and what it's even good at, so on and so forth. So that's the kind of premise of doing this type of comparative analysis. You can do it in a private match if you don't want to get embarrassed in the Crucible, or you can just do it in the Crucible yourself. But definitely go in, test perks, compare it to different weapons, see what's good, why it's good, how it's good, what it might pair with, what type of damage numbers you're getting as far as your registration goes on your hits. Is it good at being accurate? Is it good at not being accurate? Is it good at cleaning up shots? Is it not good at cleaning up shots? Is it good at just putting people down? You know, like, is it like a really consistent pulse rifle that just has epic perks, and I never even have to switch guns, so it doesn't even matter what I have in my secondary slot? Maybe you have a gun that is just so good you never have to switch off of it, like Graviton Lance or Vigilance Wing in Seasons 3 and 4 of Year 1. Am I right? Am I right, guys? Am I right? Thank God those days are behind us. Anyways, I want to say thank you for watching. Thanks for checking out my video. Sorry for the length, but I'm glad you're here.